Hey there, my name's Malcolm. Welcome to Mecha Knights Nightmare, a game made by one singular dev that revolves around the meme. Who would win? Eldritch horror beings in many sizes or numbers, or one stubborn mech pilot? The game is set in idea of what if we put armor core against massive amounts of eldritch horror monsters? And also give that mech the discretionary spending of the US whenever a developing country discovers oil. We start the game in your mech. Your name is Ethan, codename Echo 7, and you have a buddy, Jake from State Farm. You are running diagnostics on your mechs until you see Russians coming up and saying hello. And then you exchange your normal conversation with more bullets, only to see your screen lighten up like a flashbang when opening Google. We do not know who launched the missiles, but it was within the Russian soil. It was obviously not the US, because, let's face it, they don't really admit to anything. The mech has 5 parts. Each provide different stats according to how fast you want to be or how strong you want to be, to even what special benefits you want to have, which you will get on later tiers. Your weapons are in 4 slots and you can use all 4 of them at the same time. Just be aware of the overheating or the amount of ammunition they take, or for specifically laser weapons, how much batteries they take. You also have active modules, which is basically actual skills, and passive modules, which is basically passive bonuses. You also have shoulder improvements and leg improvements as well, to further enhance your mech. And if that isn't any more than that, you also have upgrades, which are big permanent upgrades. Well, in percentages at least. But regardless, it's very good later on. And you'll be spending your money on all of these upgrades until you probably max it out. So right after that whole nuclear explosion, you begin your normal patrol until you get a call from your buddies, basically telling you that you want a checkup. Maybe a nice little hot coffee. Only that hot coffee wasn't really a hot coffee, it was more of hot flesh. Moments later, Jake panically starts telling you to start shooting. What is it that you start shooting? The Reds, basically. Monsters that you will be fighting for almost 20 years, maybe even further. But let me remind you again, you're in a mech, and you have discretionary spending. So it doesn't really take long before you eradicate a nice horde on your first ever mission against the Reds. And now, it's back to Mech Hangar. Well, of course, what else do you think I spend most of my hours in? Come on now. There's a lot of stuff I gotta do. For the majority of the game, it's most likely like this. You're a mech versus monsters, and you gotta keep shooting until the monsters are no longer there. It's pretty simple, but the depth of the game relies heavily on which weapon do you really want to use to eradicate those Reds. Because every single weapon has been tuned and perfected so that way it does not feel like you're just shooting something and just, calling it a day or using a certain meta weapon. Despite this being a single game made by an indie dev, there's about 250 weapons individually unique. That's how much commitment is in the game. I don't know who else would be really thinking of that, but it's the first time I've seen this, especially in the mech game. It's a lot more than armor core, to be honest with you. During our mission, we also get introduced to another character named Mia, who basically is just the second protagonist next to Ethan because she's also good at shooting Reds using her big guns, I suppose. Of course, during all of this, the monsters and Reds keep evolving to the point that we get introduced to a bunch of new monsters that are just more different than the ones by simply doing one small thing. They shoot heat-seeking missiles. I am not joking. They are really shooting heat-seeking missiles. But don't worry, it doesn't get crazier from there. After enough defense missions by simply eradicating the Reds, you get to also do more eradication, but this time elimination. So it's basically killing more Reds, but just in how many seconds can you do it, type shit. You'll start to notice that during those missions, I won't be really making as much money as I can, but I will be getting enough loot or just progressing through the missions to get a better tier of stuff. But then I would actually take a step back and go to the first one to actually do some raids. Raids is basically the equivalent of survival. Kill as many raids as you can, each and every single wave. They become stronger, they become bigger, they become more and more, or they reach a certain limit so that your graphics card does not blow up. And then all what you get is more money and more loot depending on the tier that you've chosen on that raid. There are currently 4 tiers, starting with tier 0 and then ending all the way to tier 3, assuming you have the DLC. Yeah, that game, made by a single dev, also has a DLC, and it's rocking cool. After all the shooting and more shooting and more shooting, it was time to put an end to it by simply Operation Fire Typhoon, which is, more simply put it, bunch of bombers to simply bomb the Reds to oblivion. But of course they need to gather all the Reds into one tiny little circle. So you, of course, being the master of killing Reds, basically put the threat into yourself and keep firing and more firing until you gather all the Reds and basically see all your favorite stealth bombers just dropping lead after lead and, well, high ordnance type shit, Of course, you would think that would be it, shooting a bunch of Reds until all of them gather into a circle would be easy, no problem. But what if I told you we added a little bit of spice to it? Oh yeah, that health bar right there? Yeah, that's a boss fight. It was about time we get into a boss fight, and you'll be getting into them non-stop. It was nice to take care of it that easily using the arsenal that I've built over the past couple of hours. Now we get to watch the bombers doing their favorite job, spreading democracy all over the Reds and making sure they get extinct. At least that was the case until some funny looking lasers started showing up and deleting all of our planes, dropping them to the ground, and Jake dying. We mourn the loss of Jake by simply customizing our mech even further, because I want to put his name onto some of the weapons that I've created. It's now desperate times for the entire world to try and evacuate and move to a safer spot, and simply we are tasked with the same shit, which killing more Reds, and this time playing a little defense game where we have to protect the soldiers that are just slowly walking into their evacuation from endless hordes of Reds coming at both sides, which was one of the most interesting missions I had because it just made me focus a little bit more. Of course, I had to deal with a new type of enemy, Red Bombers. Yeah, as if it couldn't get any more worse than that. When we reach a certain tier, you'll start to notice that we acquire more better weaponry, better armor, better modules. Everything that is usually a part is usually separated into tiers, and the better the tier, the better it does at its job. So eventually you'll also get into more better weapons, more better mech parts, and then it will go from perfect to ridiculous at later tiers from now on. I hope you're ready and not planning to put any speed buffs in this mission, because that won't be the mission that you'll be doing. Instead, you'll be standing there with your weapons, shooting every single Goliath-sized mosquito and hoping you don't get shot a lot, or just call resupply a million times until you yourself go broke. As soon as I thought I was over, I was humbled back by another boss fight, this time having to stand still and hopefully I don't get shot a lot by that boss. Thankfully, the weapons that I had in this mission were pretty much a nice precision and a bit of a scatter, so I was able to head down the boss, the triple-sized Goliath mosquito boss, into oblivion this time without much of a hassle. But I never really wished to do these types of missions in my opinion. It was about time we do something different, and that is basically entering a dungeon. A secret level facility that holds information to what we need to know about some types of reds that we have encountered. First thing to do is hit the boxes for more fun and start shooting every single sloth looking motherfucker that is inside those facilities. They are not deadly, they're not dangerous, but my god, there's so many of them and I don't really wish to see them. This mission is one of the very few missions that also had an optional objective, which means you would get more bonus if you did that optional mission, which basically means more money, which basically means more loot. It's simple stuff. It was basically better tier stuff for yourself, but more importantly, you needed to download the data. But this wasn't really taking much of a time. It was simply standing in a spot and defending again until the download finishes. And then you get off back from that dungeon and never crawl into it anymore. A bit more grinding there and there, and we kind of improved our mech with more upgrades, more parts to use, and obviously more devastation to cause. It was about time to commence attacks on some new types of reds that are a little bit weirder. You would think that the red lasers was basically acquired by the reds and they just got a little bit smarter, but that wasn't really the case. What happened was the reds pretty much got evolved and now they have lasers, and I can't really explain it to you much, but I'll tell you this, I play Path of Exile too, so I don't know what's weirder or crazier at this point. Anyway, you will be facing those red laser type reds, and they are difficult if you are not moving. So be sure to have your boost always running, and also like as much armor as you could if you cannot move that fast. But if you want to eliminate them from a distance, you are given bombardment, which can be used a couple of times before you know something fucky wucky happens, and then all of a sudden you're on your own again. Thankfully that wasn't the case with my arsenal, because I also had other arsenals to use in that time. Alright, unlike last time, this time hopefully things will go smoothly, as now we have big ass tanks with rail cannons strapped onto them and battery powered by the city. I shit you not. We'll be using this against hordes and hordes of reds, and obviously all the arsenals I could use in my disposal. The mission is simple. You have to protect the 3 tanks from basically getting ripped to shreds by one just boss fight? No. How about 20 of these bosses just coming in with the same health that they have when you first started fighting the one in the first operation. But this time, of course, you have the help of the tanks and the rail cannons, so their massive damage will basically make quick, easy work. The only thing that they need is a guide, and your laser guide is the best guide to use that against the behemoth-sized reds. This is the Battle of Bosphorus, and it's probably one of the longest missions I have actually had in the entire campaign of Mecha Knights Nightmare, because it's actually one of the very few missions where you not only have to deal with behemoth-sized reds, but you also have to deal with large amounts of hordes of reds. Obviously, all of this while they're coming in waves, and at the same time, you're also protecting 3 separate tanks, which their power line faults. I wonder the fuck why, but nevertheless, we managed to intercept all, 20 behemoths of them or something. And then eventually we managed to reach into the end goal of this mission itself. There is about more and halfway through more missions in the rest of Mecha Knights Nightmare, and we haven't even started of the DLC. However, this is where I will end it today. Hopefully all of you enjoyed this video. I'll be sure to talk about it more. And yeah, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you all later.